Hello everyone, this is Robert Marzullo from Ram Studio Comics. Welcome back to my course on how to improve your figure drawing. So now we're going to cover the torso. So the upper torso can be broke down into a few shapes, and we kind of started here, but again, I want to really pound this stuff into your brain box and get you thinking the way that it requires to draw this stuff effectively. So again, I'll take a little bit more of a basic approach to the start of it, and also more of an angular approach this time. I want to show you that you don't necessarily have to use circles and ovals. Now, if you feel comfortable with that, then that's more than fine. But it's really just the basic building block principle that you want to shoot for. Sorry, I had a tough time getting that out. So essentially, by first defining this basic shape, and again, being somewhat aware of what the anatomy looks like, you start to work into the forms and simplify the process by breaking it down like this. So I'll leave the openings for the shoulders, sometimes, and then I'll, I guess I'll include the shoulder pieces on this one, just because there's a neat relationship between the shoulders and the chest that I want to be able to illustrate. So I'll just go ahead and throw those in there. Now again, the anatomy may be a little bit disproportionate to what you're after. Again, I'm more of a comic illustrator, so I tend to inflate parts of the anatomy and make things look a little bit more hero-esque. But for the most part, a lot of the information is still there. For instance, the obliques that come through the side here, the abdomen here that, chisels off into multiple muscles, sometimes 8 or 10. Not exactly sure which. I think an 8-pack's pretty impressive, so that's about as many as I ever had. And then the rib cage, you start to see areas of the ribs on the side here, sometimes even towards the front. And depending on the flexing of the chest, the stomach muscles will appear to be higher or lower based on how far their back is angled back, actually. So these are all just things to notice, and it's all kind of style choices as well. So the neck muscles just kind of come down into here. All right, so that's how I would take that form that you saw me start with the basic angular shape and add some little bit more organic feel to it with the muscles. Now the thing I wanted to show you with the shoulders, and I've got these illustrated a little bit kind of too heavily there, but I'll soft erase this down and show you further. The shoulders and the chest, the thing that I always take notice of is that they actually connect. Again, it all kind of interconnects, but they really connect. Like the musculature goes from the shoulders right through the chest like this. And it's very apparent in somebody that's pretty good shape. So it's good to show that in your illustrations, especially if you're going somebody that's got, some good definition physically. So just keep that in mind. It's something that you can easily incorporate into your work and make it look a little bit more believable. And I've got this lad a little too far up, so I'll bring that over this way. And you can see is just as I start to render this, I can move things around a little bit and just kind of fine-tune it and get them just where I want them to be. So I'll move the stomach muscles across the side there. They tend to actually blend into the obliques, so we'll do that. And again, get some of the rib lines there. And bring this trapezius right through there. And the collarbone. So like that, and again, this isn't perfect. To get perfect anatomy and perfect structure and all that good stuff, you really have to take your time with it and do a lot more shading and reworks than I'm doing here. But this should hopefully just give you a better idea of how you can construct your own and get a little bit better with it. Okay, so there's our starting point. So I'll go ahead and bring that off to the side. And let's show a bit of the tilt that happens in the abdomen. So I'll go ahead and start another sketch. And again, I'll start with a really basic structure this time. even more basic than the one I just illustrated. And I want to illustrate the bend in the abdomen. So I'm going to start off by creating a couple separate pieces basically into my design. So get the shoulders in there still. Try not to make them as large as I did on the other illustration. Those are a bit much. And what I'll do here is just try to really focus on the way that the abdomen bends and the way that it pinches on the one side of the the love handles or obliques or side handlebars, whatever you want to call them. So if I try to focus on that, because it's good to study stuff like this because the body's not always just sitting straight up. It rarely is sitting just straight up. So the more you can do studies like this, where there's some contorting going on or some twisting or stuff like that, I think the more that you'll start to feel comfortable with not only just the basic poses, but realizing exactly how the body works in motion. So let's elongate this further down. So that'll be our base design. I'll keep the neck off it somewhat. Alright, so let's try that. Let's go ahead and soft erase this down. So now again I can go back in here and clean up just a little bit. Still being open to move lines around if need be. And again, I want to show that relationship from the shoulder to the chest, so I want those to look more interconnected, like so. And then the side, pinching down to the oblique. Hopefully I'm getting the anatomy names proper. Just keep in mind this course is more to teach you the way that I draw, not on technical terms of anatomy, because that's not my strong suit. So I don't want to, say that that's something that I'm teaching you. I don't want you to adopt any terminology I'm using. Just more or less the process is what I'm trying to show you. And later on down the road, as I feel more competent about all the anatomy, then maybe I'll do a full anatomy course for you. But at this point, I do want to be forthcoming and say that my knowledge on that is less than perfect. So I would say my knowledge on most things is less than perfect, actually. But hopefully the information is valuable here to you. So you see I'm just refining that a bit, adding in little bits of segments to the muscles, just trying to visually build up on that initial rough sketch that we started with. So get some of the ribs in there. And something I'm noticing here that I should probably do is straighten out this side a bit more. And the reason being is it will in turn put more emphasis on the pinching right here. And that's what we're trying to illustrate. We just want to show that part of the form and how that works. And a good thing to keep in mind when drawing the human body in figure drawing is that you want to make sure that things exist on a different plane or a different rotation. So if you take the shoulders here and you take the hips here, obviously in this type of pose there's a good amount of change in rotation or angle, and then rotation at the waist as well. You could you could bring that out even further in the drawing at any rate. So I would really focus on that. That's going to give your drawings more realism and more effect if you're aware of those things. So just keep in mind, and we'll do this when we get into poses a little bit later on in the course, but when you have your head, your torso, and your pelvic, they can each be facing in quite a different direction. And in turn, your gesture drawing, your characters will have more more movement and more areas of interest in the pose. So just keep that in mind. But like I said, we'll get into that more as we progress. So now let's go ahead and do the female upper torso, and let's see if we can pinpoint some of the differences there. So we'll start with a straight on shot. So we'll do like a neck opening, the shoulders like this, the upper part of the abdomen. So here would be the rib cage, shoulders, and then we'll bring the waist down and go right back into the hips. So the way that I like to illustrate this is to keep in mind that there's a couple curvatures that happen here. The waist comes down, and then the silhouette or the hips go back. So if you get a couple of those lines in almost immediately, it kind of helps so you don't have such a flat body, which is real easy to do. It's easy to just trace out the shape and then not worry about the inside forms or details. So I try to get as much of that in as possible, like that. And as far as the breasts, obviously preference on size and all that, because there's lots of variables there. But then the main thing is to try to get the teardrop shape in there. It's real easy to, well, I've even spaced them out way too far. It's easy to do that, and it's easy to make them look overly rounded. So you want some roundedness in the form there, but you want to make it look more of a teardrop, and then also blend it back into the chest more as a soft kind of blending into the chest form. And that can be tricky to do. So generally what I'll do is I'll just rough it in like this and get some of my shapes in place. The rib cage like this, stomach muscles. Again, we'll kind of hint to the form. We won't make her look as muscular as the guy over there. And then do the opening for the neck. Okay, something like that. And we'll go ahead and soft erase this down. And I'll just start here and try to get this form in. Now, one thing that I notice about drawing the breasts and trying to get them to look a little more natural is to have areas where they flatten out against the body just a little bit. So a bit of roundedness on the form on the outside, then quickly bring it back into a curvature right through here. And just a little bit of a flat line right there on the sides. Generally will help make them look a little bit more realistic. They still look a little bit off, like there's a bit of a weird shape right here. But that's where obviously just manipulating the lines and playing around with it until you get it just right. It's going to help. And then the connection point from the waist here, it seems to like roll inward here and then softly outward here and then around. So it's, it can be tricky just to get it right, because you want everything's a multiple compounding curve. It's not just one line like we would draw on a 2D illustration. So it's seeing into that a little bit more and getting away from just drawing flat looking objects, which is very easy to do. It's very easy to get caught up in the drawing and just, kind of silhouette everything and make it look really flat. So I'm trying to avoid that. And the shoulders, something like that. And this line down the middle, I would say just try to always give it a bit of curvature, even from a straight on shot. This line should have a bit of movement to it from side to side so that it shows that this is a organic form. And the nipples I would just put slightly tilted up and outward. not to the center of the breast. Again, just to show direction and a bit more form. And that might be outward a little bit too much, but that's going to be preference. And the belly button right about here. Give a little bit of a pouch or belly right there. And so on and so forth. So it's really just, you know, playing around with that and seeing what shapes resonate with you and your style and things like that. Because there's lots of different ways, obviously, to draw the female body, the male body. It's just what style you're after. Again, mine's not ultra realistic, so I'm sure it's not perfect here. Okay, so now let's try, or not let's try, let's do. Let's put that right there. And let's go ahead and do an angled shot. And what we'll do is, same thing, we'll start with a very basic starting point like this. I'll go ahead and immediately get the spine in like this because I want to show the bend that occurs in the upper body. And I'll go ahead and start with some basic shapes like this and like this. Doesn't get much more basic than that. And that's what I really want to stress in this course, that if you can draw these basic shapes and just really focus on the way that you connect them, that you can draw anything. Not just, I mean, figure drawing is one of the toughest things, so if you can get this down, believe me, you can draw anything. I think that's important to note because it's, I think so many people fear drawing and think of it as something that only the talented can do. And I really don't believe that. I believe that talent is a developed thing, and that really the true thing that people are admiring about somebody that can draw is their passion. It's their passion that got them there to put in the countless hours in developing their skill set. But it often gets overlooked and thought of as, oh, you're just extremely talented. You're a savant. And that's not really the case. The majority of people that I've ever met that are truly gifted at illustration and all that will all attest to having boxes and boxes of bad drawings that got them to where they are, or paintings, or whatever the case may be. So you can do it as well. Just fill up those sketchbooks and don't have any no in your heart. You'll be there in no time. Alright, so we get the clavicles in, and here we want to make sure that we show a good angle. We put one in front of the other. That's always a good way to show a bit of depth there from the way those look from a side shot. And now the nipples are going to be appearing to point more forward or out towards the direction of the chest there. So I'll probably need to put a bit more bend into this breast here. And again, I always have to fight myself for making them look just overly rounded. It's just too easy to draw circles for breasts, and that's not how they look naturally, obviously. So you got to get just a little bit of change in direction of the line work and make them look a touch more organic and realistic. And another tricky part is just the subtlety in the bends of the ribs here to the hips. And likewise to the back here. So I'll get rid of some of these construction lines. And again, I'll get the trapezius in there, like so. The belly. And the other thing I think is good to do, like right now the pose looks stiff and it looks a little bit odd in proportions. And one of the things I think that helps to convey that is that if you were to draw a line down the middle, that it comes outward, back in, and then back this way. So again, this is where drawing things in kind of a, a 3D perspective or visualization process will help you catch flaws. And I think that I've got the shoulder out just a little bit far and the sides just a little bit too large, maybe in comparison to the hips. So it's all of that. So what I'll do is go ahead and soft erase this down again, or I think this one for the first time, and then try to fix those areas as I refine my line work. So again, try to get away from this overly rounded effect that I got going on there. And chisel out the form just a little bit there. And from this angle, I could probably say that the rib cage looks a little high there, I think. Or actually, maybe it's just the way it's going up this way. Let's try that. So a lot of times I'll just sit here and keep maneuvering lines around, especially when I get stuck on a certain thing. And keep in mind that, you are going to fight certain things. I mean, I've been drawing for most of my life, and there's certain areas like you see me kind of struggling here. It's just kind of part of the journey, But a good thing to take note of when that happens is that's an area that you have to approach, that you have to attack and get proactive and say, okay, this is what I need to study next then. So oftentimes I'll rejoice in the fact that I find something that's more difficult for me to illustrate, because that means that, that's what I need to study next, and that's how I'll grow as an artist. So don't ever fear that. Don't ever think that, I'm not good enough and I'm not getting any better. I still can't draw abdomens as well as I'd like or whatever. That's part of the growing process as an illustrator. So just, be happy about that you actually figured it out. Because a lot of people, they don't rejoice in that. They don't look at that, and they simply, just want to stay in their comfort zone and draw only things they're good at. And I just don't think that's a good habit to get into for art. So that's my less than perfect abdomen. Would I like it to be better? Sure. I'd like all my drawings to be better, and that's why I draw them. But we're going to have to go ahead and settle on this one for now. I think my proportions are a bit off there. And the other thing is, now that I've sized it down, I can see a little bit better too. I think this breast right here is a bit large. Let's see if just by toning that down just a little bit. Because, you got to keep in mind that the one that's furthest away from the camera is going to be smaller, even if it's only slightly smaller, because that's how perspective works. So I think that's a tiny bit better. Okay, so now let's go ahead and move on to the back of the torso. So let's continue on.